Let's go ahead and open our Bibles to the book of 2 Samuel. 2 Samuel chapter 16. Every week we encourage you to be in a Bible, your own Bible. There's a Pew Bible if you need it. You can be on your device too, if that's what you prefer, as long as you're in the Bible. If you're on Facebook, tell me your neighbor's on Facebook, and we'll godly call them out. No, I'm kidding, we won't. Have you ever had a week where you feel that everything and everyone is just against you? I've already talked to some of you this morning, and you had that week where you feel like, can anything else bad happen? Can anyone else that I trust turn on me? Can anyone else that I love turn their back on me and abandon me? This is where we find David in this text in 2 Samuel 16. His life is falling apart. He's being attacked. And instead of fighting back, he does something unexpected, especially for David. In that context, he stays silent. And this chapter shows us that some of life's biggest battles are not won with words and argument, but with wisdom and self-control. The greater victory of remaining silent. Father, as we prepare our hearts to be taught by you, to be corrected by you, to learn from you, give us a posture that is humble. Give us a posture that is teachable from your word. Every single one of us, we need this. I need this. The greater victory of remaining silent. When other people are saying things that are untrue, that are false, and we just long to set the record straight. Father, give us a heart that is reliant on you, that trusts you, trusts your timing, knowing that you are judge. You don't miss anything. You see every single wrong. You see every single lie. And you don't need us to be out there fighting those battles that you say you will win for us. So, Father, may your word teach us this morning. We ask these things in Christ's name, amen. So David, I think, is really returning to an area in his life that he's comfortable with. He's on the run. Has David been on the run before? The majority of his life he's been on the run. Historically, he was being chased by King Saul. He was on the run then, and he's returning to a place that he knows. He knows where to hide. He knows the people to run to. And so last week we left David fleeing Jerusalem, running out into the wilderness, weeping, just crushed and devastated that his own son would turn on him. His own son wants his throne. He wants him dead. Some of his closest friends, his advisors, have turned on him, and they're no longer his friends, but they've switched to the other side. And they're his adversaries. And they're going to, especially Ahithophel, one of David's closest friends, closest advisors, is going to tell his son Absalom some of the worst things to do, because Ahithophel has a bitterness problem. Who was his granddaughter? Bathsheba. David has already wronged Bathsheba, violated her marriage, killed her husband. And so Ahithophel has this bitter axe to grind, and he's ready to get after David. And his bitter roots are going to start showing. We can say, Ahithophel, your roots are showing. Have you ever said that? My roots are showing? Hopefully it wasn't bitterness and it was just your hair. That can be fixed easier than bitterness. Guys don't really ask, are my roots showing? They ask, is my scalp showing? Am I getting too bald? His bitter roots are showing, and you're going to see that his advice is deep-seated in hatred for David, and he's going to convince Absalom to do some terrible things. And so David is on the run. And when you're at your lowest, what does Satan like to do? He says, oh, he's low enough, right? He doesn't need any more attacks. He's fine where he's at. What does Satan do? When you're at your lowest, he comes at you even harder. So David's at what appears to be his lowest in chapter 15. It gets worse. And what Satan uses is the same thing that he uses in your life. What is one of the greatest discouragements that Satan, what is the greatest discouragement that Satan uses in your life? Your past. He drudges it up. And he says, look at this. And so Satan will use two men from the house of Saul as we get into this story. And one of them is Ziba. We talked about in Sunday school, as we were talking about how to study the Bible, the pros and cons of narrative, at least from our perspective. And one of the hard things about a narrative passage, a passage that's telling a story, is all of the names. Do you have all the names memorized from the books of 1st and 2nd Samuel? And you're like, I know who that person is. Ziba. Have you heard that name before? Some of you said no, but you have. Just sounds like all the other ones. We've heard about Ziba before. We're going to talk about him. And David is going to make a hasty judgment when Ziba makes a compelling argument. This is verse 1, when David had gone a little beyond the summit, he's going out of Jerusalem down into the Kidron Valley. He's coming up over the Mount of Olives. He's beyond the summit now. Ziba, Mephibosheth's servant, was right there to meet him. He had a pair of saddle donkeys loaded with 200 loaves of bread, 100 clusters of raisins, 100 bunches of summer fruit, and a clay jar of wine. And so Ziba comes. He's the servant of who? Yeah, this is the fun part. This is where you say the names too. Mephibosheth. And we've seen him before. David showed kindness to Mephibosheth for whose sake? Jonathan. Jonathan was David's best friend. They were BFFs. And it was Saul's son, Jonathan, who David and him were close. Now, Jonathan was not the exact same age as David. He was probably 20 to 30 years older. And he had a son. And as David was reigning as king, there was a day when David was like, who else can I show kindness to from the house of Saul? And he found out, hey, there is Mephibosheth. I can show him kindness. And how did he show kindness to Mephibosheth? He gave him Saul's land, and then he brought him into his home. Some of your deepest hurts are from those who you showed kindness to, and you brought them into your home. And they've turned on you. And so Ziba is the servant of Mephibosheth, and he's bringing all these goods. Doesn't that sound like a great friend? Right? You're in a time of need. Let me bring you 200 loaves of bread. Did you guys ever just eat bread to feel better? Find some good carbs, gluten, and just feel better? Maybe a donut's better, but bread's good too. Verse 2, the king said to Ziba, why do you have these things? Like, this is a weird timing. I'm fleeing for my life, and you show up with all these gifts. Ziba answered, what a coincidence. The donkeys are for the king's household to ride, and the bread and summer fruit are for the young men to eat, and the wine is for those who drink, who become exhausted in the wilderness. At face value, does this look like a good friend or a bad friend? Face value, have you ever been moving and you're hungry, you're starving, and somebody brings you pizza? Is that a good friend? That's a good friend. Pizza, I'll eat pizza when I'm moving, right? I'll eat pizza anytime. But like, you're hungry, you're moving. He's doing much more than moving. He's fleeing for his life. But this looks like such a good friend who brings him all these things in the desert. Verse 3. David's trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together, and he says, where is your master's grandson? Why, he's staying in Jerusalem, Ziba replied, and replied to the king, for he said, today, this is what Ziba or Mephibosheth supposedly said, today the house of Israel will be restored to my grandfather's, today the household of Israel will restore my grandfather's kingdom to me. And so Ziba is saying, you've been so generous to Mephibosheth, and he's turning on you, and you're just in a really hard time, and I'm going to come, and I'm just going to be this sweet friend who's going to meet you in your time of need. Ziba is an opportunist. He's not a good friend. He's created this false report about Mephibosheth turning on David. Now, if you're David, your son has turned on you. Your city has turned on you. Why not Mephibosheth? Do you get in places like that? And you're like, well, everybody else has. Why not just one more person? And this is where David is. Verse 4. Oh, nope, I have verse 4 up there for you. The king said to Ziba, all that belongs to Mephibosheth is now yours. David says, okay, he wants to be like that, then you take everything he owns. Saul's land and everything you'll be provided for. I bow before you, Ziba said, and I find favor with you, my lord the king. Ziba's a liar, he's an opportunist. And David is very quick to believe the report. He's very quick to say, based on my circumstances, I'm going to believe this comment. Based on how my life is going, I believe that could happen to me. Have you been there? Everything's falling apart. One more bad thing happens. What do you say? Just add it to the list. I'm not surprised. It's just, what? Murphy's Law. I'm sorry, Murphy. It's not your law, we know, but that's what it says. Right? It's that mindset of, well, I'm already here. Might as well just believe it. And so here's a principle. We need to be careful because wise leaders don't decide until they've heard both sides. David has this part of his life that is just absolutely falling apart. His son has betrayed him. His beloved city has betrayed him. And he thinks that the very guy that he's brought into his home has now betrayed him as well. And he's very quick to believe the lie of Ziba. Wise leaders don't decide until they've heard both sides. It's interesting, David's son, Solomon, is going to warn us in Proverbs 18. The one who gives an answer before he listens, this is foolishness and disgrace for him. How many of you listen to respond versus listening to understand? Do you know the difference between those two? When you're in an argument, are you listening to respond or are you listening to understand? Typically, when I'm in an argument, I'll take off my halo if you don't want to. When I'm in an argument, typically I'm listening to respond because I have to justify myself, right? You're not going to if I'm in an argument with you. I'm probably not even going to listen to your full argument. I'm not even going to listen to your full comment. And so David isn't listening to both sides. And for him, he's going to play it out. It's going to be foolishness. It's going to be disgrace for him. And then verse 17, it's echoed, this idea, the first to state his case seems right until another comes and cross-examines him. I can't tell you how many times in ministry this has happened. Somebody comes, they tell me their side of the story, and I say, oh my goodness, that is so awful. I can't believe he or she did that. I'm so sorry that happened to you. And I'm quick to have empathy. I'm quick to believe that one side. But what does wisdom say? Get the other side. You know this, though. There are really three sides of a story. There's that first side. There's then the second side. And then there's the truth. But what do? We hear the first argument. Man, that's compelling. That's so good. I believe, you know what? I believe that person could do that. Instead of saying, you know what? Let's go talk to them. I'm learning this. I'm learning. Are you guys learning? I'm learning all the time. And I'm constantly showed that I'm not a quick learner. So I'm learning that if I get a story like that and somebody says, hey, this is what somebody did. It was so awful. It's terrible. I still want to respond with, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry that happened to you. But then I want to take it a step further and say, you know what? Let's go and talk to that person. And sometimes, not always, and sometimes that person who brought me that big story will say, oh, no, it's okay. We don't need to go talk to them. I just wanted you to be aware of it. I don't want to take up more of your time. I just wanted you to know. That person, did they want the truth? No, that person wants you to be on their side. And so I'm learning, and learn with me. You're learning, right? When somebody comes with a story, say, oh my goodness, I can't believe that happened. Let's go talk to the second party, get both sides, and let's get the truth. David doesn't do that. David is very quick to jump to the conclusion that, you know what, I don't need to hear both sides. I can just hear one side, and then I can know the truth. Now, later in chapter 19, poor Mephibosheth is going to have to come to David. And he's going to have to tell David the truth, that I was never against you. It was Ziba who was against you. And then David's going to have to backpedal and say, well, I gave all the land to Ziba. Maybe you guys can split it in half. Maybe you guys can go halvesies. And Mephibosheth is like, no, it's okay. I'm just happy to be in your presence. And so David is losing a friend because he's assuming one side of his story. Now, in all fairness, does David have time to say, hey, hold on, Ziba, good story. I get where you're coming from. Let me run back into Jerusalem and talk to Mephibosheth. Does he have time to do that? No, he doesn't. But he doesn't have to make the quick exclamation of, hey, you get all the land. That's fine, right? I believe you. So that's our tendency. We interpret people's stories based on our circumstances instead of based on fact. David is understanding everybody's turned against me, and I'll believe anything. And that's Satan's lie for you and I. When you're down and you feel alone, Satan comes along, and what does he want you to do? Lean into, nobody loves me, nobody cares for me, I'm isolated, I'm alone. An isolated Christian is a defeated Christian. An isolated Christian is an ineffective Christian. And that's what Satan wants us to do. And really, that's what Satan is doing for David through first Ziba, and now this second guy, Shimei, the stone thrower. Look at verse 5. When King David got to Bahurim, a man belonging to the house, or to the family of the house of Saul, was just coming out. His name was Shimei, son of Gera. And he was yelling curses as he approached. And David's like, oh, great. Let's just keep going. Verse 6. Look at what he does. He threw stones at David and all the royal servants and the people and the warriors on David's right and left. So your son wants your throne. Your son wants you dead. Your city hates you, wants you dead. And now there's this guy, right, who's just like, nah. Do you guys have people like that? Do you have a Shimei in your life, right? A spirit of Shimei in your life? Maybe it's at work. Maybe it's in your family. Maybe it's in your neighborhood. Somebody who's just always there to throw something at you, to beat you down, and to say, you're not good enough, you're a failure. Because look at what he does to David. Shimei, verse 7, said, as he cursed, get out, you man of bloodshed, you wicked man. The Lord has paid you back for all the blood of the house of Saul, in whose place you became king. And the Lord has handed the kingdom over to your son Absalom. Look, you are in trouble because you're a man of bloodshed. This guy is just waiting around, waiting for a moment like this. And he sees David is down. He sees David is mourning. David is fleeing. And he sees his opportunity to lay into a fallen leader. Here's another principle. There are people eager to see a leader fall. They're watching. They're waiting. And as soon as that leader falls, what do they say? I told you so. I always had a bad feeling about that person. I always knew there was something off about him. And what do? They make themselves into the moral high ground. And they say, I would never do that. But I always knew that person was like that. And everybody else fell for them, but I wasn't. I wasn't going to fall for it. And so Shimei accuses David of being what? Of shedding what? Blood. Okay, so start there. Is that true? Yes. Has David shed blood? Yes. We know that because David is in his palace one day and he's like, oh my goodness, Lord, you blessed me so much. I'm in this beautiful palace. Let me build you a temple. And God says, hold on, you're not that guy. Why? Because David, you have too much blood on your hands. Now, do any of your translations say bloodthirsty? Because this translation just says bloodshed. Some translations, I think, is more accurate and says bloodthirsty. And he's accusing David of being this bloodthirsty man who's just out for blood and wants to do anything to make his way to the throne. Now, was that David's heart? No, it wasn't. David had plenty of opportunity to kill King Saul. And his men were like, hey, seize the opportunity. This is like his head on a golden platter. Like, just kill him. And what was David's response time and time again? I will not lay a hand on God's anointed. I will not lay a hand on the Lord's anointed. Now, Shimei comes along and he accuses David of the death of Saul and really death that's have happened in his household. So, Saul died because of an Amalekite, not because of David. Abner dies, not because of David. Ishbosheth dies, not because of David. And the three people who are responsible for all three of those murders, what does David do with them? He executes them and says, you do not lay a hand on the Lord's anointed. And so David was doing everything he could to be in the right, and yet along comes somebody who loves to dig up the past. The enemy loves to drudge up your past and use it to discourage you. And you'll notice how he does it. He comes along and he knows some history about David. What was the reason David couldn't build the temple? Too much blood on his hands. When you guys drive around and you see something being built, what do you ask? What's going in there? And then you call somebody who might know what's going in there, right? Like over by the Palms. What's going in there? Does anyone know? I'm really curious. Abe, you're close to there. What's going in there? Apartments. Thank you. I wondered, right? I want to know what's going in there. And so David's collecting all these materials for the temple. He has to stockpile it somewhere. And everybody in Jerusalem's talking. What's David collecting? What's he going to build? And what's the answer? He's not building. David's not building. Why is David not building? And everybody's going to know God told David no. Why did God tell David no? Because he's a man of bloodshed. And so everybody knows something bad about a leader, and they're going to throw it back in his face. When you're at work, people know you're a Christian. They know you love the Lord. Do you ever slip up at work, say something, a word that you shouldn't have said, a statement, a phrase, something about somebody, and you have a wonderful little Shimei come out of the woodworks who you probably don't even talk to, and they're like, aren't you a Christian? What do you do? No, you don't do that. That's not good. That's not the right response. But that's what the enemy loves to do. He digs up the past. He throws it in your face, just like this guy is doing. And look at verse 9. I love the Old Testament. I love these stories. There's so much humor. There's so much validity to the story because it's exactly how we are. So, verse 9. Then Abishai, son of Zeruiah, this is Joab's brother. This is David's nephew. This was the same guy who, when David went into the camp, when Saul was chasing him the second time he could kill him, he goes into the camp, and instead of killing King Saul, he takes the water pitcher and the spear, and it's Abishai who's like, hey, let me at him. I could pin him to the ground and kill King Saul right here. And David's like, please stop. Please stop being this way. Because look at what he says. Abishai is still the same guy, and he says, why should this dead dog curse my lord the king? Let me go over and remove his head. He's a man of action. He's trying to get ahead. I know that was a reused joke, but in case you weren't here before, anyways. Verse 10, the king replies, I love this. Sons of Zeruiah, do we agree on anything? These sons, his nephews, are like the Old Testament sons of thunder. Who are the New Testament sons of thunder? Two brothers. John and James. It's James and John, but that's fine if you want to put that one first. And in Luke chapter 9, they have this encounter with these people up on the hilltop. They're yelling at Jesus and the disciples. And the sons of thunder go up to Jesus and say, hey, Jesus, do you need us to call down fire from heaven and get rid of these people for you? Like, Jesus really needs somebody else to do that. If he wanted to, he could have. Jesus is like, no, leave him alone. And so David is like, listen, sons of Zeruiah, do we agree on anything? He curses me this way, notice, because who told him? The Lord told him, curse David. Therefore, who can say, why do you do that? Then David said to Abishai and all of his servants, look, my own son, my own flesh and blood, intends to take my life. How much more now this Benjamite, leave him alone and let him curse me. The Lord has told him to. Perhaps the Lord will see my affliction and restore goodness to me instead of Shimei's curses today. Here's an awesome, hopeful principle. I hope you keep this with you all week. People may curse you and hate you, but the Lord is your defender. People are going to say things about you. A Shimei will appear in your life and will curse you, will hate you. Does the Lord need you to go around and defend yourself? What does David say all throughout the Psalms? The Lord is my shield. The Lord is my rock. The Lord is my defender. He can do a better job of defending you than you can. Let the haters hate. Let those who curse, curse. Let them be. Verse 13. David does that. David lets him be. So David and his men proceeded along the road as Shimei was going along the ridge of the hill opposite them. As Shimei went, he cursed David and threw stones at him and kicked up dust. He looks like a toddler up there. And David's like, you're fine. Your life would be so much more peaceful if you treated those around you who act like that way. Just let them be. Like, don't engage them. Don't stand up for yourself. Just let them throw their tantrum, and everybody's going to be like, what are they doing? Verse 14, finally the king and all the people with him arrived, exhausted, so they rested there. Of course they're exhausted, right? They're tired of hearing that guy. And so I wonder, partially, if David is still weighed down by the guilt of his past. And maybe you see a mirror here. People bring up the past. And what's the first thought that pings in your mind that's unhelpful? People bring up the past, what do? Maybe they're right. Maybe they are right. Maybe I am too lost. Maybe I am too sinful. Maybe my past is too bad and God can't forgive it. I wonder if that's where David's still living. I don't know. But I believe there's a deeper lesson here that we need to take to heart. It's easy to listen to those who you want to hear. Those people who come into your life and they're like, you're doing everything right. Just keep doing it. It's great. You need encouragement. Absolutely. Do you grow if that's all you hear? You're doing great. Don't change a thing. Does God tell you don't change a thing? God says you should probably change 95% of what you're doing. Not always, right? Sometimes it's 94. We do better. We need that correction. And so listen, David is willing to listen to his critics. He says, no, let him talk. Maybe I need to hear this. And so you need to be in a place where you're willing to not only listen to those who give you the encouragement and the praise, that's good, listen to them, but be willing, be grown enough to accept the criticism. We don't call it criticism in our Christian circles. What's good criticism? What do we call that? Constructive feedback. Yeah? So if you get constructive feedback, accept it. And I've told you many times, I love, my dad listens online, and he'll sometimes send me constructive feedback. And I will tell you, I would much rather listen to the, hey, that was an awesome sermon today. I'm like, yeah, tell me more about that. Give me some constructive feedback. And I'm like, oh, Lord, I need your help. Because what he says is right. And what's so dumb is I listen to it and then it's better the next time. And I'm like, right? We need that. We need people in our lives who are willing to criticize, and we need to be in a place where we're humble enough to take instruction and learn to take it better and better. We're all learning, we're all growing in that. And so, because of that, I believe David's encounter here with Shimei is a greater victory than his victory over Goliath. Men, what do you know about yourself? Is it easier to roll up your sleeves and just go get it done? Or is it easier to sit back and take criticism? Why are all the wives smirking? The husbands are like, let's move on to the next point. And the wife's like, keep going. There's a reason within Christianity why everybody knows the story of David and Goliath. Because it's big, it's flashy. Was that a victory? Absolutely. Great victory. But how many of you, before today, knew the victory that David had over Shimei? Probably not many of us. And if we did, we forgot it. But isn't there a greater victory when we remain silent, when we're falsely accused? It's not as flashy, it's not as impressive. And again, Solomon reminds us, Proverbs 16, patience is better than power. Would our culture change if we were teaching our young men patience is better than power? We teach our young men, culture does, go be assertive. Power, right? Run over people. Get done what you need to get done. Patience is better than power, and controlling one's emotion than capturing a city. I think in the sight of God, this is a greater victory than over Goliath. We all can get mad. We all can run after the giant and attack him. But David is forgiving Shimei. What's he doing? What's forgiveness? What did we say? It is what? Forward, giving them to the Lord. He's saying, God, you take care of Shimei. I don't need to. You don't need my help. I'm going to forward give him to you, and I'm going to run to you and let you heal my heart. Last week, I think this might be in your notes, I don't remember. Psalm 3. We looked at Psalm 3 last week. If it's not in your notes, jot that down. Psalm 3, David writes it, and he cries out to the Lord, and he says, I'm trusting in you when everybody else is turning against me, when there's this false report. Write down Psalm 41. Psalm 41 is titled Victory in Spite of Betrayal. Psalm 55, it's titled Betrayal by a Close Friend or by a Friend. And many scholars believe that this is a psalm that is written about David's friendship with Ahithophel, because David says being betrayed is so much deeper. If it was an enemy, it wouldn't really matter, but it's so much deeper because it was a close friend. It's someone that I shared sweet fellowship with. Some of you have lost a close friend, someone who you once shared this sweet fellowship with. When that happens, friends pick sides. And so you've experienced this, you know this in your own life. Let's keep going, verse 15. Now Absalom and all the Israelites came to Jerusalem. Ahithophel was also with him. When David's friend Hushai, the Archite, came to Absalom, Hushai said to Absalom, long live the king, long live the king. So Hushai is that mole that David did, who wanted to go with David into the wilderness, and David said, no, I need you back in Jerusalem to counteract Ahithophel's counsel to my son. I need you to be the voice of wisdom. He's going to be the voice of bitterness. I need you to counteract that. So verse 17, Is this your loyalty to your friend? Absalom asked Hushai. Why didn't you go with your friend? Talking about David. Not at all, Hushai answered Absalom. I am on the side of the one that the Lord, this people, and all the men of Israel have chosen. I will stay with him. Furthermore, whom will I serve, if not his son? I served in your father's presence. I will also serve in yours. So Absalom accepts it. He believes it. And he turns to his other counselor, Ahithophel, and he says to him, give me your advice. What should we do? He's asking, what should we do to get the people of Jerusalem to accept me as their king? Verse 21. Any advice you receive from a bitter person is very dangerous. Ahithophel is that deeply bitter person, and he replied to Absalom, sleep with your father's concubines, whom he left to take care of the palace. When all Israel hears that, you have become repulsive to your father. Everyone with you will be encouraged. And so Ahithophel encourages him to do a secular practice that all the other kings did. It's similar, really, it's animalistic. It's similar to a lion that takes over a pride. It's to show dominance. Verse 22, so they pitched a tent for Absalom on the roof, and he slept with his father's concubine in the sight of all of Israel. If Israel, Jerusalem, was observing the Torah, what should they have done with Absalom that next day? Executed him. They should have executed him. They should have stoned him. Leviticus 18 is very clear. Leviticus 20 is very clear. And so, sadly, this is also a fulfillment of what Nathan the prophet said to King David when he confronted him with his sin with Bathsheba that was done in private. And David gets angry, and Nathan says, You are that man. And he says, your house will be defiled publicly. What you did privately is going to happen publicly. Where did Absalom set up the tent? On the roof. Where did David fall privately? On the roof. What you do in private, the warning is this: what you do in private will come out publicly. What's done in private will always be exposed. Verse 23, now the advice Ahithophel gave in those days was like someone asking about a word from God. Such was the regard that both David and Absalom had for Ahithophel's advice. My goodness, who wants to end on that note? So we're not going to, but we're going to end on this warning. This is from Exodus 34. The latter part, most of you have heard this verse. It talks about consequences of sin. It talks about the generational consequence of sin. And it says that the guilt is visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children and the children's children to the third and fourth generation. Is David fully forgiven in the eyes of the Lord for what he did? Absolutely. Are there consequences that are trickling down to the next set of kids? Yeah. That's the warning, but listen, we're not going to end on the warning. We're going to end on the hope. Exodus 34. Go back, in the middle of verse 6. The Lord, a God merciful and gracious. Can we end on that today? A God who is merciful and gracious, who sees your sin, who will forgive your sin, because it says he's slow to anger, wanting you to turn from that sin, and abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness, keeping steadfast love for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin. David left a legacy of sin. but you don't have to. It's true that sin leaves a legacy, but so does mercy. And God's mercy goes farther and lasts longer. David's sin had consequences. He's living it. His children are living it. The warning is real. Deal with sin before it deals with you. But the invitation for us this morning is that any of us can stop that sin cycle. I hope you believe that. You can stop the sin cycle in your family. God will forgive. God will extend you mercy. And that mercy will go further and last longer than your sin. Let God's mercy be your legacy. Lord, as we close this morning, the weight of sin is heavy. But Father, what comes to mind is the song that we sing, that my chains are gone. I've been set free. We are free in Christ today. Those of us in Christ, we know and we've tasted the freedom of our sin. And so, Father, help us to leave a legacy of mercy that points back to you. Father, many of us here this morning are dealing with the guilt of the past, the fear of what the future will hold because of what we did in the past. God, you are a God who redeems. We're going to stick with this story, and we're going to see how you redeem David's life back up out of the pit again. God, you can redeem our life back up out of the pit. Your mercy is there every morning. Your mercy is new every morning. We thank you. We praise you, and help us to live in that freedom. We ask these things in Christ's name. Amen.